Hi, I'm Valerie Kuzina, and today is June the 9th, 2025, and I'm in my studio/bedroom in East London. When I tell someone that I'm an artist, it's always followed by the question, what kind of artist are you? I still don't fully know how to answer that question properly, but let's say I'm a visual artist who works primarily in pastels and colored pencils on paper. Most of my drawings are based on observational sketches, and that's why I always carry a sketchbook with me. My background is deeply rooted in painting. I spent about 10 years studying it, first in art college and then at university. A few years ago, right after graduation, I moved to the UK from Russia and shifted from painting to 3D art for a short time. And I would say it was quite fun and refreshing change. At the moment, I mostly draw, but I also experiment with new mediums like textile art and try to combine my knowledge of 3D with my current practice. While I was an art student, I only valued art created before the 20th century, especially Northern Renaissance, Russian medieval art, and early modern movements like Impressionism. It was only in my last year at university that I started to search for new approaches and new visual references. I found it quite tricky to free myself from academic boundaries and to take a fresh look at both myself and art in general. The great thing is that now, being in London, I'm able to see so much art from all over the world, and the huge number of contemporary exhibitions have really opened my eyes. And I'm currently in the process of transforming my past experience and skills into some new direction. My education and the amount of effort I put into my development earlier definitely helped me with my new projects. And I would say I have a strong foundation, and now I'm building something new on it. At first glance, my work doesn't seem to have any direct narratives from my early life or experiences. But I believe it's simply impossible for any artist not to reflect themselves on their work. Your background, childhood, and the context you were raised in stay with you no matter where you go. So, even though my recent drawings are not about my hometown but about the place I live in now, I'm still sure that the way I see and transform reality in my work is closely connected to the visual culture I grew up with. Speaking about influences from other artists, I can name a few who resonate with me most at the moment, as well as those who inspired me earlier in my development. Starting with the early years, probably the most important artist for me during my education was the Russian painter Isaac Levitan. I used to think I would paint lyrical landscapes like his for the rest of my life, and some of my peers were also a huge influence. We painted side by side and learned so much from each other. By the end of my formal education, I got a lot of inspiration from the British artist Leon Kossoff once. I had the chance to see his work for the first time at an exhibition in Moscow, and it was full of raw energy, unlike anything I had ever seen before. And I still find his work incredibly inspiring every time I see it. And of course, Henry Matisse is another artist I look at with admiration. His color harmony is just beyond words and always strikes me deeply. I keep a few images on my wall above the desk, and one of them, the brightest one, is The Tiger by Franz Marc, a German expressionist. I was lucky to see his work last autumn at Tate Modern, and his compositions are full of energy, color, freedom, and they really resonate with me. There are probably many more artists who have influenced me over time in some way. And yeah, we are always observing and learning from everything we see, aren't we? For example, about a year ago, while working as an art teacher, I rediscovered oil and soft pastels and materials for creating art. For some reason, I had only used them in childhood, and for a long time I preferred oil paint, but thanks to my teaching practice, I realized that pastels are actually something I really want to work with. And all of my recent body of work has been created using pencils and pastels, and I'm more than happy with this change. Using these materials, I'm currently focused on developing a series of drawings based on my observations and reflections on the place I live in and how it connects with my inner state. Most of the drawings in this series are quite large, over a meter on the longer side, which makes it a bit challenging to continue without a dedicated studio space, but yeah, I'm working on it and hopefully I'll be able to find one soon. So yeah, this ongoing series featuring the color blue and architectural elements is my main focus at the moment. Besides that, I'm also working on my first ever rug based on a drawing I made about a year ago. It's really a slow-moving, long-term project, but I'm really glad I started it. It's a completely new medium for me, so we'll see how it develops. And yeah, of course, I'm always thinking about the future projects, making plans and sketches, considering materials. I'm truly grateful to have the chance to express my thoughts and feelings through art. Even though sometimes being an artist is quite challenging. Probably the biggest surprise for me was realizing that being an artist isn't just about being able to draw or paint well. It's actually so much about networking, communication, and learning how to present yourself and your work to the world. And for a long time, I didn't think about those things at all. I was fully focused on mastering my technique. I wasn't really prepared for the realities of the art world after graduation, and that hit me quite hard. It was a kind of frustrating feeling. In a way, for me, it was probably even a bit more difficult than for my peers, because I moved to a new country and had to start my life from scratch here. I'm still trying to find my place within the artistic community, but yeah, I've already met some very kind people who support and appreciate my work, and we'll see what lies ahead. If I could give my younger self some advice, I'd probably say try to see a bit wider. There is so much in the world and in art that you haven't seen yet. Be more open to people and maybe start thinking about what it really means to be an artist in the modern world. I'm pretty sure I would have resisted that advice 10 years ago, but maybe it would have stuck with me a little and, I don't know, helped me be a bit more ready for life outside the university walls. Anyway, speaking of staying open, material-wise, once I've tried some unconventional approaches in that area. For my graduation project, for example, I didn't just stick to paint. Alongside acrylics, I used plastic and paper that I collected from my recycling bin. I melted plastic bottles with a heat gun so they'd stick together. The piece was about the environmental crisis, how much waste we produce, and how animals are having to adapt by using man-made materials to build their nests. It was definitely an unusual process for me at the time, but also really freeing. I'd love to try something like that again one day. Sometimes while working, I might find it difficult to concentrate. It can be tricky to fully immerse myself in the process, especially if I have some doubts or feel uncertain about the artwork. In those cases, I found it helpful to listen to soundtrack from one of my favorite anime series, or a musical album I know by heart, just to create a good, non-distracting vibe. A few months ago, I even ended up listening to some lectures about Buddhism. I also love listening to art history podcasts, but that usually doesn't end well. I get too interested in the subject and start looking up all the images being discussed. But most of the time, actually, I prefer complete silence to get the best results. I even closed the window so neither birds nor cars can distract me from drawing. And those moments are the best, really. I like when I have a chance to share my work with someone, and the most valuable reactions for me are always from people whose art I admire. About 10 years ago, one of my peers looked at my plein air tiny sketch and said he found it very pretty and authentic, and asked me to show more of that kind so he could explore and, maybe even learn something from my work. For the record, this guy was a legend among us, and his level of work seemed to be far above all other students. And that day he told me he liked my sketches. I couldn't believe myself. I cherish this moment for a few reasons. One of them is that it was a pleasant surprise and totally unexpected. And another reason is that my peer Andrew is no longer with us, and I'm happy to have this heartwarming memory about him. And of course, that wasn't the only time I felt happy that someone connected with my work. It's always a pleasure to know that people see something in my drawings or paintings that speaks to them. Something touching, maybe even nostalgic. I think it's just great when art resonates with you and brings up emotions or thoughts that pull you out of your everyday routine, even if just for a moment. Thank you for watching, and thanks to Art by Artist for the opportunity. If you are interested in my work, please feel free to check out my Instagram, Valerie Kuzina, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always open for a chat.